Lamed Tes, because sort of completed the parentheses. The line begins with the word yiheyeh be-offen achar gamri. And we explained a phenomenal Ayin that there is a yiheyeh in sechel that actually approximates re'iyah gashmis, and it is when the whole scholar is in the mahus hadover, not in the sechli, as we explained. Sechli, that which lends itself to be described and to be presented, but that which exists only as part of the reality itself. As he says, "Osid lovei," this is the level of haschol that's going to be. That all knowledge, this is the last line that we learned. Okay, the line starts yiheyeh be-offen achar. The haschol Osid will be in a different manner. Or k'mei shekosav, in the pasuk goes, "Haski v'yodeya oisi," to understand and to know me. What does it mean to know me? These are two separate things. You know the world, and you know who created the world. Haski v'yodeya oisi means that you know everything by knowing me, by knowing Elokus. In everything you see the Elokus element, and that gives everything a mahus, a real presence, as we discussed at length the last few days. Okay, now we're going back to the original point of this whole discussion. We want to explain the difference between zivug gufni and zivug ruchni. And he explained that zivug ruchni is like the of sechel, and what sechel is that which lends itself in hasaga, and even beyond that, it is still not the essence itself. Within the sechel, you have the sense of that which is bli gvul, but really in that there is still a inyan from gvul. And now we're going back to the other thing. Ar behamshoches hatipo mehamoyach. So that which we have to give sechel, at every level there is an element of hagbola. But hamshoches hatipo mehamoyach. Moyach means the brain, the physical brain, which is a much lower level than the chayes hanefesh that's in the brain, the sechel. But im hayois, all those shezehu hashpo gashmis. This is hashpo of gashmi, which is much lower than the ruchnis hanefesh. Yet, yesh bozeh koyach ein soif. Therein, there is contained a koyach ein soif, a koyach, a limitless koyach. Where do we see the koyach ein soif in this hashpo? Shaharei yochel lehoirid ad ein shir. Number one, yochel lehoirid ad ein shir. He can give birth ad ein shir. to no end. V'gam, and also Shaharei HaNoilad, the Noilad, the one that gets born, the offspring, Yoilid Oid, will further give birth. All that began from the initial in Ashpoah from the Moyach. Ad sheyetzu kam oderes mimenu lein shiur. To the extent that many generations can come from him, lein shiur, boundless. Harei, thus we see, sheyesh bozeh koyach ein soif ubli gvul, that there is therein a koyach ein soif, ubli gvul, without boundary.
What's the first Haylada Lane Shiur?
He himself, as long as he's alive, he can give birth. By sechel, this is still going to be by sechel, we normally say that the expression is akop kemin starufshtel. You can only be mashpia sechel to someone who is already a bal sechel, so that you arouse his thinking in a certain direction, from a certain perspective, and he understands it. You do not give sechel per se. You do not put sechel where there is no sechel. Whereas in Haylada you create the entire entity. This is really Ein Sof, a whole reality itself. Ulachoira, it would appear that Zehu Kiyum Hamin, that this Inyan, that it can go generations and further down, this comes from the principle of Kiyum Hamin, of the eternal continuation, sustenance of the mean. The mean means the species. Sheyesh b'chol hanivroyim. That is present in all nivroyim, in all creatures, not only in the human being, not only in the yid. Ve'ein b'hem mitzad atzmam. And this is not something that is by them, mitzad atzmam, in and of themselves, because of their own capacity of eternity. Sharei hei mugbali, because in fact they are all mugbali. All the creatures are mugbal. Kiyim hu mikoyacho insoiv hamakayimom. Rather, this union of kiyim hamin comes from the koyach insoif, from an external, a bigger koyach hamkaimom that sustains them. Therefore, from this perspective, it would appear. We're saying that in Ashpaz Hamoyach there is Ein Soif, but this Ein Soif is not from the Moyach. This Ein Soif is an Inyan that actually comes from a greater source. That's called Kiyum Hamid. And this Kiyum Hamid is present in all Nivroi, because all creatures are created with Sheshes Mebreshus. It says Pru Urvu, and they can continue on indefinitely because of the Koyach Ein Soif of the godly command that they should be. But they do not in themselves represent this Inyan, the Ein Soif element. The Nivroim on their own, they perceive only a limited presence. We shall still come back to this. V'koyach zeh hu b'nivroim elyonim. This koyach, the koyach of Kiyum Hamin, the koyach Ein Soif, that is provided to them mitzad the Creator, mitzad the Ein Soif, is actually present in nivroim elyonim, in the higher creatures. Hainu b'nivroim horuchniyim, in the more spiritual nivroim yoyser. There, this koyach is present even more by them than in the koyach tachtonim, than in nivroim tachtonim gam gashmi. Shaharei heim kayomim beyish. Since that they higher nivroim, like Malachim, for example, kayomim beyish, they maintain their presence beyish on the individual entity. V'nivroim shalamato kayomim rak b'min. And the nivroim here below, the gashmizik in the world, their sustenance, their continued being is only b'min, is only on the species rather than the individual. So actually, we are trying to say that the Gashmius in Zivu Gufni there is a greater power than the Ruchnis. But actually, this Inyan of Kiyum exists in Ruchnis more than the Gashmius. There is Kayomim Be'ish on the individual, and here it's only Kayomim Be'min.
Is this één malig dat baby?
Huh?
Één malig dat baby?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, depending on the Malach, yeah. It's in the Rashi this week, last week, right? Elisha said to the tsunamis that you will have a child. So she said, the Malachim came to Avram and he told him, I'll come back. She says, he could say, I'll come back. I can't say, I'll come back.
Kees Chaya.
Huh? Kees Chaya. All right, this is a little bit of an involved Indian. Let me see what's the... Yeah.
I thought Malachim only existed to do their shlichus. In other words, when they didn't have shlichus, they didn't exist.
No. There are such Malachim. Malachim are created all the time, but Malachim like Foil, Mechoil, these are Malachim that are on attention all the time. Okay, let's continue and then we recap and put things in perspective. Hine be'emes. So in fact, in truth, klolos hadover hazeh, this inyan overall, the fact that there is the inyan of the kiyum hamin, or kiyum of the entity, this kiyum element, hu kiyum hamin shezeh yisayf. In fact, this is the inyan from kiyum hamin, which means this is not something which is contained within the individual entity, an individual human being, but this is kiyum hamin shezeh yisayf. Koyach Insof means this is the original koyach that created them, and it continues to create, to give them, to sustain them, that they should continue to be. Like, for example, we discussed the tree and the ground. The ground has a koyach Insof to produce vegetation. Tache horas dash. And that is a continuous thing. And from this koyach comes the continued rejuvenation and the sustenance that it gives to each tree, that it should continue to grow and continue to stand and be productive. This is all from the koyach Insof that is imbued in the orits. And this is koyach, this is kiyum hamin, because the command from the Insof is that there should be this mean. There is not a command for an individual. Except benivroim ha'elyonim, and the higher creatures, ein ze bebchinas hashpo bohem. That inyan is not bebchinas hashpo bohem. It's not like it becomes, it's being introduced to them all the time. It's being given to them. Rak sheyesh bohem koyach ha'insof b'mkayim ha'insof. There is there the koyach ha'insof that holds them up, but it is not something that's mushpa, that is mislabish in them. V'yogdua the koyach zeh eine b'bchinas hislapshus bohem. This koyach is not in his slapshus manner. Kiyim michutz lohem. It remains michutz lohem, external to them. Here is the means by which we can relate to this. We speak about the inyan of the sun produces light indefinitely, and it also has the heat. It also actually expands some of its energy. And yet, it does not diminish in its power. This fact that it doesn't diminish is that, in fact, it gets recreated all the time. This is not something that is contained within the sun itself. Because of the initial creation, there should be this sun. That initial, like the Baal Shem Tov says, that that the words that initially created everything, they stand and they continue to create, and they create everything in its juvenile state. So then there is different. He says, by them it is not the Islam, As is explained elsewhere, the Ein Sof, the yiheyeh shel liyeh is slapshus, koyach bli gvul, beguf bal gvul. That it's impossible that the koyach bli gvul should be his slapshus in a guf that is bounded, that is limited. Therefore, if you see in there a manifestation of a koyach bli gvul, it is like in b'chinas makif. It is makif. The koyach bli gvul is makif on this, and it continues to sustain it. V'hahashpah shalahem, but then the hashpah that comes from them, shezehu mehakoyach hamislabesh bohem, the hashpah that they produce, this comes from the koyach that is actually mislabish bohem, that actually becomes part and parcel of them. Who b'chinas hagbal? The hashpah has to be hagbal, because anything that is actually mislabish in them, since that they are in themselves mugbal, therefore the hashpah also has to be mugbal. V'chein, and the same is true in Nivroim Shalamato and the Nivroim below. Be'hashpah ruchni shalahem shehi mugbelas kana. That the hashpah ruchnis that they can give is mugbelas, is limited. Because the inyan that they have this continued being, this Ein Sof, this is not something which is imbued in them. This is something which is given to them from outside. Ava bodam lamato, but in the human being, pa'otam lamato he below. Hare hakoyach Ein Sof, by him the koyach Ein Sof in ehu b'bchinas ha'ashpah bohem. This has Ein Sof by them is b'chinas hashpah bohem. It is actually imbued. It's in a hashpah manner. It becomes part and parcel of them. V'davko b'hashpah gashmi shalahem, and that is expressed and is contained exclusively in the hashpah gashmis. Okay, it doesn't look like we're going to finish the entire presentation. I just want to say this, as we're going to see later. This koyach Ein Sof that we say that is actually mislabesh in the human being, and thereby he is able to be mashpia bli gvul through the gashmis to heiloda, and it is not part of the inyan of the general principle of kiyum min, of the species. In all creatures, as we're going to see, this is only from outside. This is called part of the mean, except by the Yid. Because a Yid, there is a neshama that is bli gvul, and there is an individual Ein Sof element. Have a few minutes, we'll continue. I just wanted that we should not walk away with a misconception. There is a primary difference between the Yid and everything else. And thus the Heilodah capability is only when the Neshamis Malachim don't have that capability. The Shishim Heim Malchus, as explains in Likutei Torah. or behemoths v'chayos. And then, but behemoths and chayos also have the ability to reproduce. Yesh bahem koyach ha'helodo. They have the koyach of reproduction, mipnei shemekablim mikoyach ha'tzemeach sheba'oretz. Because they receive the hashpah, their koyach, from koyach ha'tzemeach sheba'oretz. She'esh b'zeh gam kin koyach ha'insoif. In the koyach ha'tzemeach sheba'oretz, there is the koyach ha'insoif. Meshum denotes chiloson b'seifon. As he explains over there in Tanya, notes also b'seifon, that the koyach ha'insoif of Malchus expresses itself on the very bottom in the oretz. Meshikosu b'dikutei rishon. So that there is an element of kayomim b'min, of continue to be existent in b'min, on the species, which is not really imbued in the element itself. Just to give us a little bit of a handle on this, the principle here. We Yidden Abnei Avram, Yitzchak, Yankov. We're talking about, I don't know how many generations since Avram, Yitzchak, Yankov. And yet, we say, you are Abnei Avram, Yitzchak, Yankov. Because, like it says in the Torah in this parsha, even though Yishmael is also Ben Avraham. That who is Ben Avraham? Yitzchak. In Yitzchak was imbued Avraham's koyach ein sof, and he carries on this koyach indefinitely. Yishmael is his offspring in a completely different manner. This is what's called kayom b'min. B'yitzchak yikol chazara, this is Avraham himself. And this Indian that Avraham himself can continue on to be indefinitely is due, and this is, we're going to see later, is due to the fact that in Avraham, his own nefesh, his own neshama, is bilti bagul. His chayes was bligvul, and this is why there is the bligvul in his reproduction. In all other creatures, there is not a chayes bligvul in the creature itself. There is just the general command that there should be this species. And this is the big difference. Bnei Yisrael, Abnei Avram, Yitzchak, Yankov. They have a completely different internal power. And this is brings up again the if you understand this even a little bit, the tragedy of a Yid intermarrying with Lahavdol, with a Goy. It's a completely different. There is no. It's no such thing as intermarriage. Huh? But then they lose the whole thing. All right. And this will be it for this morning.
This is this is one in unit Tzelem Elokim. In other words, how this is truly representing God, basically, to be able to create.
This is, yes, this is a koyach halakhi that's in every Yid.
Did we get to in here?
Mm-hmm.